All right. Well, here we go. We get to dive into one of my favorite books, one of my favorite scriptures, actually. So we remember last week we ended with reading the story of the snake that got a mantra and was abused by the children, and we've learned the difference between hissing and biting. So we're allowed to hiss. We can be it's like Jesus in the temple, when he was tipping over all the tables of the money changers and snapping the whip, but he didn't hurt anybody. He wasn't pushing people over. he was he was just pushing the tables over. So we can certainly stand up and defend ourselves and make our point and be strong. We are not being called to be cowards or to back down from everything. Vivekananda makes that point that's a difference between householders and monks. For monks, he says, no, you take what comes always. But for householders, you have a responsibility to stand up for your family, for your partner, for your life's work, those things. So you have permission to fight for the security of things. That's probably another conversation about what you can fight over. But this non-violence for householders is I wouldn't say limited. It's not limited, it's selective. Let's put it that way, you know. So it's proper to fight at times for defense or whatnot as a householder. For the monks, Swamiji said that that wasn't the case. Monks should take what comes. And so now he's coming in and saying, in this creation of God, there is a variety of things: men, animals, trees, plants. Among the animals, some are good and some bad. There are ferocious animals like the tiger. Some trees bear fruit sweet as nectar, and others bear fruit that is poisonous. Likewise, among human beings, there are the good and the wicked, the holy and the unholy. There are some who are devoted to God, and others who are attached to the world. Men may be divided into four classes: those bound by the fetters of the world, the seekers after liberation, the liberated, and the ever free. Among the ever free, we may count sages like Narada. They lived in the world for the good of others, to teach men spiritual truth. Those in bondage are sunk in worldliness and forgetful of God. Not even by mistake do they think of God. The seekers after liberation want to be free themselves from attachment to the world. Some of them succeed, and others do not. The liberated souls, such as the sadhus and mahatmas, are not entangled in the world, in woman and gold. Their minds are free from worldliness. Besides, they always meditate on the lotus feet of God. Suppose a net has been cast into a lake to catch fish. Some fish are so clever that they are never caught in the net. They are like the ever free. But most of the fish are entangled in the net. Some of them try to free themselves, and they are like those who seek liberation. But not all the fish that struggle succeed. A very few do jump out of the net, making a big splash in the water. Then the fishermen shout, "Look, there goes a big one." But most of the fish caught in the net cannot escape, nor do they make any effort to get out. On the contrary, they burrow into the mud with the net in their mouths and lie there quietly, thinking, "We need not fear any more, for we are quite safe here." But the poor things do not know that the fishermen will drag them out with the net. These are like the men bound to the world. The bound souls are so tied to the world by the fetters of lust and greed. They're bound hand and foot, thinking that lust and greed will make them happy and give them security. They do not realize it will lead them to annihilation. When a man thus bound to the world is about to die, his wife asks, "You are about to go, but what have you done for me?" Again, such is his attachment to the things of the world that when he sees the lamp burning brightly, he says, "Dim the light, too much oil is being used," and he's on his deathbed. There's a few wonderful things in there. One is a warning that I take for myself, and I've thought about it quite often. First of all, it's very interesting to me that this Jesus tells this exact same story. So it's a shared parable between Ramakrishna and as he came this time, and when he came the last time as Jesus, he told the same story. And so this is quite an important lesson for us, because this idea of the fish that becomes secure and kind of just burrow down into the ground while they're still caught in the net and feel secure there, that's a situation that's really quite a danger for us as spiritual seekers. It's a matter of giving up your edge, giving up your concern and sort of taking somewhat of a comfort in your routine, and kind of just setting the idea of your spiritual life just slightly off center, so that you can get a little bit of a break. Who wants to be responsible all the time, right? It's all right if I, do this, that, or the other, or whatnot. Usually it's not even that conscious. We just sort of kind of amp up our material life a bit, and then just let the intensity of our practice drop down a bit, and we get comfortable. Not because we are comfortable, but because we're ignoring or being letting ourselves be distracted from our true purpose, from the whole reason for life. And so it's very important that we keep that intensity alive, that we keep that love alive, that we do things regularly to enhance that inner desire for the divine. All of those things that Thakur listed 2 weeks ago: the singing of the glories of God, the repetition of the name of God, doing good for others, doing your practice, doing the little things that we do all the time to see the divine or to remember the divine in everything. And so it's important that we stay close to our purpose, and that we stay strong in that, that we stay aware, we stay conscious of our life. If we're living in the presence, that will take care of itself. If you're living in the awareness of the divine, in a full focus in the moment of mindfulness, that will take care of the problem. And that's really what our goal is. It's not so much taking care of these problems as it is just living in the presence of God. That's where our bliss is, our joy. And so this lust and greed is something that's always kind of around the edges. And because it is around the edges all the time, Ramakrishna says that lust doesn't disappear until God realization, that hankering will always be there. You'll always remember those things, and they'll always be there. And so if you don't have the discipline to lift the mind above them when they happen, or to go to mother when the challenges come, or to discern carefully in your mind the nature of the things that it's longing for, if you don't do those practices, little by little you get worn down, and you find yourself compromising and compromising. And Ramakrishna talks about how if you're going down a gradual hill, you don't realize that you're losing altitude until you get far enough down and you look around, you're like, oh my gosh, how did I get down here? So we've got to be careful. Mm-hmm.
When I hear the word lust, I think of sex, but I'm not so sure that if lust is supposed to be forever until you realize maybe it's not just.
Well, the lust he's talking about, I mean, is well, yeah, I mean, it is the hankering after sex pleasure, sense pleasure, with sex. It's definitely, that's the major one he's talking about. And it does, it's in the mind, and it's not for everybody. I mean, there are those people, even people who aren't spiritual seekers, who are just asexual. They just somehow have not for what by grace alone, really, have not had that hankering. But for most people, for the majority of people, it's a thing that just sits there, just scratching at the back of the mind. And if you don't have the discipline to say no in your mind, and that's why we talk about all that importance of integrity within us, that our thoughts, our words, and our deeds remain the same, because we need that kind of integrity to make our no a no and our yes a yes. If we say no to these things inside, but we don't mean them, that's the problem. When you say, no, I'm not going to do that, but whatever it is, you leave it laying around so that it's not out. You don't go and throw the thing away or put the thing away or whatever. You kind of tantalize yourself. Your no doesn't mean no. Your no means not now. Or your no means I've got to fight a little bit longer to feel good about it, and then I'll mess up. This is why we have to be on guard with the mind, because we're deluded, not because we're victims. We're deluded because we like delusion. And that's why the mind is so dangerous, not because it has any ability to do anything on its own. It doesn't. It's your mind. You are in control of it. But if you don't operate that control, there's reasons that you don't. And so that's why the discernment light always has to be on. That's why the awareness of the beloved should always be there. Because really, that love of God, once you've tasted that or experienced that, is really the only pull that is powerful enough to take away the longings of the body and mind. That's why thinking and living in the presence of God is what brings us to transcendence. It does all the work. The presence, that association with the divine, is what does all of the work within us. It's what raises our mind above the sense level and aligns our integrity inside and gives us a conviction and a strength of mind to keep ourselves in charge of the body and keep ourselves in charge of the mind, so that they don't take charge of us, which is the danger. When we identify with them and they raise up those longings, we think that we identify with it. We say, oh, I'm feeling like I want to have sex, or I'm feeling like I want to have a drink, or I'm feeling like I want to do these things. When you attach that I to it, when you don't understand that it's just the nature and workings of the body and mind that raise these things up, that they're not really a calculated desire or a calculated effort to get something. They're just what the body and mind do. If you don't have that separation, and you think that you are the body, or you think that you are the mind, which means that when the body mind brings up these appetites, if you call them your appetites, like, oh, I want a cookie right now, or oh, I want a glass of wine right now, or whatever it is, when you attach your I to it, that's what gives it power. That's where the delusion of thinking that freedom is the ability to get what you want. See, that's the definition of freedom for the person who is attached to the body and to the mind, who thinks that the desires and whims of body and mind are their own desires and whims. And so that's the thing that has to be really guarded against right there. You always have to maintain that sense of identity. That's why we do our practice to get ourselves established in the morning before we go out into the world. And when we come home in the evening, we go again to undo the damage of the day, as it were, from having been out there like that, so that we can stay in this place of peace, this place of calmness, where we're not identified with the body and mind, and thereby not overly affected and harassed by the desires, the notions that come up in body and mind, right? Because body is purely mechanical, mind is purely mechanical. You are the magic that makes them more than that. You are the magic that brings in divine love, brings in wisdom, and uses this existence to express through body mind, right? So you're the magic component. So don't get deluded into thinking that the body or the mind and their whims are the magic element that you're looking for. You are the magic element in there. So he says he draws the line and shows how deep this delusion can be, that a man on his deathbed will tell them to turn down the oil lamp to save oil. You know, he's on his last minutes of life and he's concerned about the electric bill. You know, so this is how deep this problem goes in us. He's just making that point to show you. It's like also making the point really that on your deathbed, you'll be where you are normally, where your habit takes you. You know, so if you want a peaceful death where you're sitting in the bridal chamber of the heart waiting for the arrival of your beloved, if you've never done that before, you're not going to be there when the time of death comes, you know, unless a great stroke of grace comes over you, you know. And so this is why we practice living in that space, because we don't know when we're going to go. We don't know when life ends. And so we try and live in a set of habits that will put us where we want to be when that moment comes, you know, when it's time to take the pillowcase off, as it were. So yes, let's see here. All right. The bound souls never think of God. If they get any leisure, they indulge in idle gossip and foolish talk, or they engage in fruitless work. If you ask one of them the reason, he answers, "Oh, I cannot keep still, so I'm making a hedge." And then time hangs heavy on their hands. They perhaps start playing cards. Now, this is a hard one for me to read because I don't have to look more than 15 minutes ago before I realized, you know, I sat down, had a few extra minutes before class started. I'm sitting in front of the computer, and so what do? You know, I start up the Mahjong board, you know, to spend some time. Now, fortunately, fortunately, I caught it. I turned off the Mahjong board and I opened up a book of spiritual poetry and read a poem after realizing what I was doing. And I'm glad I did it now that I see that this verse is one that we're reading tonight. But you know, this is something to work with, though. You know, there's because you can't always be expected to be on at full strength. I mean, that of course is an ideal, but most of us don't have that tenacity or that strength to do that. So I would say that, you know, if it's a situation where you've got to have that game of solitaire running on your computer, play it with mother. You know, bring her to your card game. That will change the nature of it. You know, so really this will do the same thing. It will put you in that state of awareness with the divine. And you know, it also takes on a reality that's far deeper than imagination in time, if it isn't already that way for you. And so, you know, it's not so much the playing the cards that's bad, it's the wasting of time. And the waste of time can be defined as time in forgetfulness, time, unconscious time, when you put the mind in a place where it's not considering important things, the things that are important to you. You know, that it's not holding the hand, it's not keeping the hand on the rudder. So the way to do that is always bring mother along, bring the divine, bring your ideal along. If it's you know, I say mother because mother is really the one that that I imagine comes with me. But you know, the divine comes in all of his forms, and so you spend the time with the form that's most helpful with you. So bring him into your vices, right? I always tell people that when Girish Ghosh wanted to drink, again, I bring up the same points over and over that the master never told Girish to stop drinking, because what alcoholic doesn't know that he needs to stop drinking? It's not helpful for someone who doesn't have your weakness to sit there and tell you to quit. Doesn't it's not helpful to you. So what did Ramakrishna tell him? He said, when you take that glass of wine, hold it up to mother, offer her the first sip, and then thank her for the bliss that you think you're going to get from drinking that glass of wine. That instruction was enough to eventually bring Girish to sainthood, to give him his realization. So that's the teaching. Whatever your vices are, if you simply cannot break the habits, if you simply cannot stay away, then at least keep the presence of God in the midst of it and share openly, no hiding, internal or external, from yourself or from the divine nature, what you're doing. Don't ever allow yourself to go unconscious to where you simply won't let a thought occur in your mind until you've indulged in whatever it is you're indulging in. That is where the harm is done. That is what will ruin your spiritual life. Keep consciousness present. Be aware. If you're going to, like Vivekananda says, if you're going to sin, pick a good one, pick a big one, do it consciously is what he's saying. Don't abandon mind and not think about what you're doing so that you can slip into it. Go where you're going to go, but do it with a conscious decision. If you simply have to have that glass of wine, then you sit down and you say, Ma, I have been fighting this hankering for the whole day. I am dying. I can't do it. Will you sit down and have a glass of wine with me? I'll have 3/4 of a glass. I won't have a second one. You set your boundaries, you set your intentions, you set your strength, and you go forward. And so you sit down and you put the picture of mother on the table and you pour yourself a glass of wine, and maybe you pour mother a little glass of wine, but don't drink hers. And then and then you have your glass of wine and you sit with mother, and it keeps you conscious and it keeps you aware, and you stick to the boundary that you established, and you finish that glass of wine and you move on. That is a healthy way that will bring you toward advancement, to growth. In time, it turns Girish Ghosh into a saint. It will do the same for you. All right.
Oh. Kwame, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
First of all, this strategy applies not just to your vices. You could have mother with you while you're doing your laundry.
Always. Absolutely.
Always forget. Okay, so my vice is Netflix. I'm not watching anything super evil or anything, but it's like there's probably better uses of time. So I would say, Mother, let's watch a little TV tonight. That?
Yes. Yeah. And then be aware for as you're watching it. If something big happens, oh, Ma, wasn't that hilarious? Oh my God, I'm so nervous. Are they going to be okay? Okay. Yes. I know it sounds childish at one level. It's not. It really is a practice of life that is very helpful. But you're right. Basically, the idea is always be aware of God. And so that, of course, always keep God in your mind. And most of us, I don't think we all do that, or most of us even do that. But nonetheless, the real dangers, to not think of God can be neutral in its effect. You just kind of skate along where you are. But the thing is, with our vices, if we choose ignorance, right? If we choose to not think about what we're doing or what we're allowing or what we're thinking about looking at or going for, that is damaging the spiritual life. That's damaging your internal integrity. You see, so that's why we're focusing on the vices that you get involved with. If you allow them and you go into that ignorant space, that space of ignoring the presence, ignoring your deeper will, the will of your conscience, the will of the self with the capital S, if you're willfully putting that out of your mind to make room for your indulgence, that is the equivalent of just cutting your heart.
That's idolatry.
Yes, absolutely right. Absolutely right. That's putting the body and the mind in the place of God. You're right. So don't do that. Really, really, for your own sake, don't do that. You know, it's a terribly painful thing to have to work that out. And if you go on doing that long enough, the power of that bad habit can cause you a lot of suffering. All right, a lot of suffering. The bound souls never think of God. If they get leisure, they indulge in idle gossip and foolish talk, or they engage in fruitless work. If you ask one of them the reason, he answers, I can't keep still, so I'm making a hedge. When time hangs heavy on their hands, they perhaps start playing cards. There was deep silence in the room, and every one of us knows why. A devotee, sir, is there no help then for such a worldly person? Master, well, certainly there is. From time to time he should live in the company of holy men, and from time to time go into solitude to meditate on God. Furthermore, he should practice discrimination and pray to God, give me faith and devotion. Once a person has faith, he has achieved everything. There is nothing greater than faith. Nothing greater than faith. That's exactly, that's a very, very powerful statement right there, that faith can circumvent or short circuit all effort. Because that faith, if you can have that faith in the same way that you can have that inner integrity, if you can firmly believe that what Thakur tells you, or what Christ has told you, or what Buddha says, if you can 100% hold that in your heart as truth for yourself, that in itself will protect you from these diversions of vice, from these forgetfulness, from karma, from karma. It's that faith and grace that gives that will bring you and draw you close to the divine. It's that faith in the ideal of unconditioned love, even though you can barely even know what that means from this world. It's faith in that love, faith in the forgiveness from the divine, faith in the face of grace, that allows you to sit before the mother absolutely free, because you know and firmly believe that she has given you permission to let go of your karma, to let go of your vice and its effects on you. So if you can hold on to that grace, if you could hold on to that faith in Mother's grace and God's grace, in the grace of the divine, that is the knife that cuts through these delusions. That is the energy, the battery that powers our love, our seeking the divine, of our effort to go to the divine, to let go of our lower self, to understand our nature. He turns to Kedar and says, you have heard about the tremendous power of faith. It is said in the Purana that Rama, who was God himself, the embodiment of absolute Brahman, had to build a bridge to cross the sea to Ceylon. But Hanuman, trusting in Rama's name, cleared the sea in one jump and reached the other side. He had no need of a bridge. See, that's the faith. And it's like, there are statements about faith that are mind-boggling, just mind-boggling. This is one, you don't need the bridge. If you had the faith, you could jump, and there's several beautiful things in that. This world is unreal. And that means that it's not unreal in the sense that we don't just get it. It means that it's fundamentally unreal, because you can violate the laws of nature if you have the faith that it can be done, right? It's such a strange thing. Think of when you're dreaming. When you're dreaming a dream, there are times when you have flown, right? There are times when you just, however you did it, you flapped your arms and you started flying in the dream. Well, why don't you fly in every dream? Sometimes you're in a dream and you can't fly, and you're terrified of falling off the cliff, but the previous dream you could fly. What is it that determines whether you can fly or not? Obviously, it's not the dream. It's your attitude in the dream. It's what you think in the dream that makes it real, right? So in this world, when Jesus stands there and tells you without laughing, without crossing his fingers behind his back, he says, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, hey, mountain, get up, throw yourself in the sea over there. And then he turns to you and he says, verily, I tell you the truth. That mountain will get up and throw itself into the sea. And you sit there and like, sure. Okay. Why don't you believe it? Where is your faith that this is the incarnation of God who's just told you to throw a mountain in the sea? Why can't you go outside right now and say to the mountain, get up and go in the sea? And, why do you already believe that it wouldn't happen? See, this is the challenge of faith. Because if you have the faith, you can do it. I would love to read in the news tomorrow that some mountain. Houston doesn't have a mountain. There must be a lot of people of faith there. They threw all the mountains in the sea already. But maybe all of Texas did that. Sounds like they're thinking about throwing Texas in the sea, I heard. Anyway, so the faith in the love of God, this faith in the grace of God is really all you need. What he doesn't tell you is that really all of the practices that we do are there in order to give us access to this faith. So it's the faith that's born of practice, and not not that we can put faith in place of practice, but at some point you will be able to. You must have heard about the tremendous power of faith. It is said in the Purana that Rama, who was God himself, the embodiment of absolute Brahman, had to build a bridge to cross the sea to Ceylon. But Hanuman, trusting in Rama's name, cleared the sea in one jump and reached the other side. He had no need of a bridge. Everybody laughs. Once a man was about to cross the sea. Vibhishana wrote Rama's name on a leaf and tied it in the corner of the man's cloth. And he said to him, don't be afraid. Have faith and walk on the water. But look here. The moment you lose faith, you will be drowned. The man was walking easily on the water. Suddenly, he had an intense desire to see what was tied in his cloth. He opened it and found only a leaf with the name of Rama written on it. What is this, he thought. Just the name of Rama? As soon as doubt entered his mind, he sank under the water. You see? So this is this whole thing, faith. You can see here it was his thinking process that brought down his faith, right? Now that's an interesting thing to ponder, because one of the things we've studied regularly is this idea of no mind, still mind. So if you're able to have a mind that you can shut down when you're not using it, there's no opportunity for a lack of faith in a quiet mind. You see, so in a quiet mind, you would read something like this, and that thought would remain there. It would be established there. There wouldn't be another thought that would be like, I wonder why this is working. Let me check and see. And then the thought processes begin. And since you're not able to understand that everything is just a thought, you think that thoughts are real, and you even think that some of those thoughts are your own thoughts. So you trust them and you believe them. And what happens is you develop a faith in your thinking that's greater than your faith in the divine, right? And that's what makes the whole thing fall apart. So this idea of training the mind and understanding that everything, your whole life, your personality, everything that's happened to you, everything that will happen to you, all of the sensations you've ever had, all of it are just thoughts. You have never experienced anything but a thought. And you have given those thoughts so much power over yourself. And so here Ramakrishna is inviting you to take back your power. Take back your power as being that. I am that. Thou art that. So take back the power of that, right? And let go of the limitations of your thinking. Let go of the limitations of your smallness. And be what you have always been. This is your play. This is your dream. That one without a second is what you are. not in the role that you're playing, not in the ego that you're wearing, but in that which wears egos and that which plays. Your nature is that. And there is no power missing in that. That is absolute faith. And that is your birthright. If you can stop believing the thoughts that tell you otherwise.
Ronnie, I
Yeah.
don't think it's hard for me. Faith in God is hard because God seems to be messing up so much.
Yeah, that is a problem. It's an interesting problem because on what scale are we judging God?
Yeah, my mind flips back and forth, like
Yeah,
I'm guys and I have all this faith, and then I like look outside, see, whatever. That I look at the world and I'm like, oh my, I have compassion for atheists. It does make sense. I don't know. I see their perspective.
yeah. No, and so does God. God. God is an atheist when he's playing an atheist. He's a believer when he plays a believer. He's you when he plays you. So those things are all fine, but it's good to sit there and understand we can't judge without ego. It's like until we get rid of the ego, we're skewed in our judgment because, from the divine perspective, everything at this moment is absolutely perfect. Ukraine is perfect. The earthquakes were perfect. Everybody that died in them was perfect. The women that were just killed in Mexico was perfect. The suffering of their family is perfect. Egos can't accept that. We can't accept that because we put our body and mind in that position and we think, oh, how could God ever do such a thing? But once we've been enlightened, once we realize that this world is but a dream, an illusion, a misunderstanding on the part of an ego, it's not such a statement. It's not saying that, okay, making people suffer is okay and perfect. That's not what God is saying when he says every moment is perfect. He's saying that this moment for a soul that knows it's a soul, who knows it's unaffected by the dream of the world, who knows that it's ever free and ever pure and ever blissful. To that self, looking at the world and saying it's perfect is obvious and natural because he understands that this world is not for bodies. This world is not for minds. This world is not for egos. This world is the divine. And it's perfect for those who know that they are divine. Now, don't misuse this. Always it has to be said. Until you know that, you're not allowed to call the world perfect. So you can't walk by that homeless person on the street and say, oh, it's his karma. It's perfect for him. You're not allowed to say that because your nature does not allow that. Your nature is to alleviate suffering. And so it's always your responsibility to alleviate suffering. When you are able to suffer without suffering, then you have the permission to allow someone else to suffer. When you know in your own self that there is no suffering, then you can allow someone else to suffer. Until you know that, until you're willing to change places with that homeless person freely, not as some great heroic effort on your part to trade places, but where it really wouldn't matter to you whether you were homeless or not, whether you were cold or not, whether you were sick or not, whether you were dying or not. When you reach to that place, then you have the ability to walk by and say the world is perfect as it is. And you would say that if you were in that place. But until we're in that place, we always have to understand that all of our judgments betray an ego, betray an ignorance, something that we do not understand, because we look at everything in relation to our body mind. Everything we've created an eye that has a billion strings of relationship going out to every object around you. You look at the paintings in your room, there's a relationship between your body mind and that painting, right? but there's not, right? That painting hasn't always been there. It won't always be there from here. You know, in a monastery, it's even easier to see that because none of the paintings are yours. But you'll still draw those relationships, right? We are everything. Everything is within us. It's like, what do you own in your dream? You don't own anything in your dream. Why? Because you can't bring it out of your dream. It's there. It's not yours, right? It's just what it is. And so it's the same with this world. You don't own anything in this world because you can't take anything out of it when you go. So no, this world is a dream. And in the dream, there will seem like there's good things and bad things. There will seem like these things. And as long as you are living in delusion, it is true. And you will experience them, just like Thakur just finished listing out. There are good people and there are bad people. There are things that will help you out of delusion, and there are things that will take you into delusion while you're in the dream, right? And so our work is to discern and discern and discern and discern so that we can turn off the mind, relax the mind, and let ourself be expressed, the self of love, the self of wisdom. Right? If a man has faith in God, then even if he has committed the most heinous sins, such as killing a cow, a Brahmin, or a woman, he will certainly be saved through his faith. Let him only say to God, O Lord, I will not repeat such an action, and he need not be afraid of anything. So know that. It's a very important thing right there. So when you go to God to apologize, you know, or to admit or whatever, you're processing your relationship with the beloved, and you're like, you know, I should have come and spent that time with you this morning, and I didn't, and I didn't make any arrangement for not being with you, Ma. I should have done it. I won't miss it again. I'll be there, you know, and then you move on. You move on. You don't, you know, ask for forgiveness again later and then ask forgiveness again later. You move on with your life, right? And you put all of your energy into staying true to your vow, and you go forward. Don't let things accumulate. Don't keep a history of faults running in your mind, because that will bring you down. You will lose the battle if you keep track of your faults, right? Because you won't be able to have faith in yourself, right? And Ram Vivekananda says what? He says, in the old world, an atheist was he who didn't believe in God. He says, but in this day and age, an atheist is he or she who does not believe in themselves. If you do not believe in your ability to realize God, you will not realize God. So you have to develop this faith in yourself. Say that you'll do it and go forward. And if you fall down, you get up and try again, and you go forward. And once you've made it right inside, once you've apologized or admitted or seen your fault and set it down, you get up and go forward. You're free. If you drag that stuff with you, oh God, your life is a misery. You'll feel like, oh, I'm such a hypocrite. Oh, I just can't do this. Oh, my mind is so noisy. You know, I can't manage. This is too much. And then your religion becomes a discouragement to you. Your religion becomes a burden to you. And you forget the one most important thing, and that is the grace of your beloved, the unconditional nature of that love for you. And when you've forgotten that, what else do you have? You have nothing in this world. So hold on tightly to that love and to a belief and trust in that love. It's that love that gives you permission to let go, to try again, and to be free, even though you have bound yourself a million times. Right? So that is why Thakur says this faith is so powerful, is such a strong thing. When he had said this, the master sings a song. I love it when he sings these songs. There's always something in them for the moment. If only I can pass away, repeating Durga's name. How canst thou then, O Blessed One, withhold from me deliverance, wretched though I may be? I may have stolen a drink of wine, or killed a child unborn, or slain a woman or a cow, or even caused a Brahmin's death. But though it all be true, nothing of this can make me feel the least uneasiness. For through the power of thy sweet name, my wretched soul may still aspire even to Brahminhood. This is what we're talking about, right? And we read that as a body and mind, and we get all kinds of nervous questions about, oh my God, how can a murderer be forgiven just by faith like that? Oh my God. Because the faith that he's talking about will allow that murderer to never murder again. You know, the faith that he's talking about will allow that liar to never lie again. It's our freedom lies in our understanding and our firm conviction in our nature, which is love, in the nature of our beloved, which is ourself, which is love, and our faith in that wisdom, in all the things that our teacher has told us, that we hold on to them with a tenacity and an integrity that's unshakable. This is what we are becoming. This is what is happening to us every day, that we make any effort at all, even if we don't make the effort. This is what the divine is turning us into. This is what living this in this world is creating in us. Little by little, we get there. If we can take it with an intention like this, it's faster and shorter. But either way, you're destined to it. So hold on to that and be free in it. Be strong in it. And be that which you've always wanted to be. Pointing to Narendra, the master said, "You all see this boy? He behaves that way here. A naughty boy seems very gentle when with his father, but he is quite another person when he plays in the Chandni. Narendra and the people of his type belong to the class of the ever-free. They are never entangled in the world. When they grow a little older, they feel that awakening of inner consciousness and go directly toward God. They come to the world only to teach others. They never care for anything of the world. They are never attached to lust and greed." The Vedas speak of the Homa bird. It lives high up in the sky, and there it lays its egg. As soon as the egg is laid, it begins to fall, but it is so high up that it continues to fall for many days. As it falls, it hatches, and the chick falls. And as the chick falls, its eyes open. It grows wings. As soon as its eyes open, it realizes that it's falling and will be dashed to pieces on touching the earth. Then it at once shoots up toward the mother bird high in the sky. I love Narendra. You know, Swami Vivekananda really used to tease Thakur over his belief that this Chatak bird was real. And so he one time points at a pigeon and says, "Oh, there's your Chatak bird over there," and teases him. But this notion is here, you know, that we stay true to our nature. The bird doesn't panic; it flies up. Why? Because it knows that it's a Chatak bird. All right. It does everything according to its nature, and it survives and finds its freedom. And so this is all of religious life. This is all of spiritual life. Being true to your nature. Be true to your nature, and you will survive this world. You will make it across this ocean of delusion. You will transcend your confusion and find this purity of heart that is you, this freedom that is yours. It's always been yours. At this point, Narendra left the room. Kedar, Prankrishna, M, and many others remained. The master, "You see, Narendra excels in singing, excels in playing on instruments, in study, and everything. The other day he had a discussion with Kedar and tore his arguments to shreds." Everyone laughs. "Is there any book in English on reasoning?" he asks M. M. "Yes, sir, there is. It's called Logic." Master, "Tell me what it says." M was a little embarrassed. He said, Well, one part of the book deals with deduction from the general to the particular. For example, all men are mortal. Scholars are men. Therefore, scholars are mortal. Another part deals with the method of reasoning from the particular to the general. For example, this crow is black. That crow is black. The crows we see everywhere are black. Therefore, all crows are black. But there may be a fallacy in conclusion arrived at in this way, for on inquiry one may find a white crow in some country somewhere. There is another illustration. If there is rain, there is or has been a cloud. Therefore, rain comes from clouds. Still another example. This man has 32 teeth. That man has 32 teeth. All the men we see have 32 teeth. Therefore, men have 32 teeth. English logic deals with such inductions and deductions. Sri Ramakrishna barely heard these words. While listening, he became absent-minded, so the conversation did not proceed far. When the meeting broke up, the devotees sauntered in the temple garden. M went to the direction of the Panchavati. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. After a while, he returned to the master's room. There, on the small north veranda, he witnessed an amazing sight. Sri Ramakrishna was standing still, surrounded by a few devotees, and Narendra was singing. M had never heard anyone except the master sing so sweetly. When he looked at Sri Ramakrishna, he was struck with wonder, for the master stood motionless, with eyes transfixed. He seemed not even to breathe. A devotee told M that the master was in samadhi. M had never before seen or heard of such a thing. Silent with wonder, he thought, is it possible? Is it possible for a man to be so oblivious of the outer world in the consciousness of God? How deep his faith and devotion must be to bring about such a state. Narendra was singing, "Meditate, O my mind, on the Lord Hari, the stainless one, pure spirit through and through. How peerless is the light that in him shines. How soul bewitching is his wondrous form. How dear is he to all his devotees. Ever more beauteous in fresh blossoming love that shames the splendor of a million moons. Like lightning gleams the glory of his form, raising erect the hair for very joy." The master shuddered when this last line was sung. His hair stood on end. Tears of joy streamed down his cheeks. Now and then his lips parted with a smile. Was he seeing that peerless beauty of God that shames the splendor of a million moons? Was this the vision of God, the essence of spirit? How much austerity, how much discipline, how much faith and devotion must be necessary for such a vision? The song went on. Worship his feet in the lotus of your heart, with mind serene and eyes made radiant with heavenly love. Behold that matchless sight. Again, that bewitching smile, the body motionless as before, the eyes half shut, as if beholding a strange inner vision. The song drew to a close, and Narendra sang the last lines, caught in the spell of his love's ecstasy. Immerse yourself for evermore, O mind, in him who is pure knowledge and pure bliss. The sight of the samadhi and the divine bliss he had witnessed left an indelible impression on M's mind. He returned home deeply moved. Now and then he could hear within himself the echo of those soul-intoxicating lines. Immerse yourself forevermore, O mind, in him who is pure knowledge and pure bliss. Can you imagine? Can you imagine it? All right. I'm going to slip out quietly, and I want you just to sit and be with that beautiful vision, that beautiful ideal. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji. Good night.
Thank you so much.